human specimen in order to judge all the others. People are like trees in a forest. No botanist would think of studying each individual birch tree." Katya, who was arranging the flowers one by one in a leisurely way, raised her eyes to Bazarov with a puzzled expression, and meeting his quick, casual glance, she blushed right up to her ears. Anna Sergeyevna shook her head. "The trees in a forest," she repeated. "Then, according to you, there is no difference between a stupid and an intelligent person, or between a good and a bad one." "No, there is a difference, as there is between the sick and the healthy. The lungs of a consumptive person are not in the same condition as yours or mine, although their construction is the same. We know more or less what causes physical ailments, but moral diseases are caused by bad education, by all the rubbish with which people's heads are stuffed from childhood onwards, in short, by the disordered state of society. Reform society, and there will be no diseases." Bazarov said all this with an air as though he were all the while thinking to himself, "Believe me or not as you wish, it's all the same to me." He slowly passed his long fingers over his whiskers, and his eyes strayed round the room. "And you suppose," said Anna Sergeyevna, "that when society is reformed there will be no longer any stupid or wicked people?" "At any rate, in a properly organized society it'll make no difference whether a man is stupid or clever, bad or good." "Yes, I understand. They will all have the same spleen." "Exactly, madam." Madame Odintsov turned to Arkady. "And what is your opinion, Arkady Nikolaevich?" "I agree with Evgeny," he answered. Katya looked at him from under her eyelids. "You amaze me, gentlemen," commented Madame Odintsov. "But we will talk about this again. I hear my aunt now coming in to tea; we must spare her." Anna Sergeyevna's aunt, Princess X., a small, shriveled woman with a pinched-up face like a fist, with staring bad-tempered eyes under her grey brows, came in, and scarcely bowing to the guests, sank into a broad velvet-covered armchair, in which no one except herself was privileged to sit. Katya put a stool under her feet; the old lady did not thank her or even look at her, only her hand shook under the yellow shawl which almost covered her decrepit body. The princess liked yellow, even her cap had yellow ribbons. "How did you sleep, auntie?" asked Madame Odintsov, raising her voice. "That dog here again," mumbled the old lady in reply, and noticing that Fifi was making two hesitating steps in her direction, she hissed loudly. Katya called Fifi and opened the door for her. Fifi rushed out gaily, imagining she was going to be taken for a walk, but when she found herself left alone outside the door, she began to scratch and whine. The princess frowned. Katya rose to go out. "I expect tea is ready," said Madame Odintsov. "Come, gentlemen. Auntie, will you go in to tea?" The princess rose from her chair without speaking and led the way out of the drawing room. They all followed her into the dining room. A little Cossack page drew back noisily from the table a chair covered with cushions, also dedicated to the princess, who sank into it. Katya, who poured out tea, handed her first a cup decorated with a coat of arms. The old lady helped herself to honey, which she put in her cup; she considered it both sinful and extravagant to drink tea with sugar in it, although she never spent a penny of her own on anything, and suddenly asked in a hoarse voice, "And what does Prince Ivan write?" No one made any reply. Bazarov and Arkady soon observed that the family paid no attention to her, although they treated her respectfully. They put up with her because of her princely family, thought Bazarov. After tea Anna Sergeyevna suggested that they should go out for a walk, but it began to rain a little, and the whole party, except the princess, returned to the drawing room. The neighbor arrived, the devoted card player. His name was Porfiri Platonich, a plump, grayish little man, with short spindly legs, very polite and jocular. Anna Sergeyevna, who still talked principally to Bazarov, asked him whether he would like to play an old-fashioned game of preference with them. Bazarov accepted, saying that he certainly needed to prepare himself in advance for the duties in store for him as a country doctor. "You must be careful," remarked Anna Sergeyevna. "Porfiri Platonich and I will defeat you. And you, Katya," she added, "play something to Arkady Nikolaich. He's fond of music and we shall enjoy listening too." Katya went unwillingly to the piano, and Arkady, although he was genuinely fond of music, unwillingly followed her. It seemed to him that Madame Odintsov was getting rid of him, and he felt already like most young men of his age, a vague and oppressive excitement, like a foretaste of love. Katya lifted the lid of the piano, and without looking at Arkady, asked in an undertone, "What am I to play to you?" "What you like," answered Arkady indifferently. "What sort of music do you prefer?" went on Katya, without changing her attitude. "Classical," answered Arkady in the same tone of voice. "Do you like Mozart?" "Yes, I like Mozart." Katya pulled out Mozart's Sonata Fantasia in C minor. She played very well, although a little too precisely and dryly. She sat upright and motionless without taking her eyes off the music, her lips tightly compressed, and only towards the end of the sonata her face started to glow, her hair loosened, and a little lock fell over her dark brow. Arkady was especially struck by the last part of the sonata, the part where the enchanting gaiety of the careless melody at its height is suddenly broken into by the pangs of such a sad and almost tragic suffering. But the ideas inspired in him by the sounds of Mozart were not related to Katya. Looking at her, he merely thought, "Well, that young lady doesn't play too badly, and she's not bad looking either." When she had finished the sonata, Katya, without taking her hands from the keys, asked, "Is that enough?" Arkady said that he would not venture to trouble her further, and began talking to her about Mozart. He asked her whether she had chosen that sonata herself, or someone else had recommended it to her. But Katya answered him in monosyllables and withdrew into herself. When this happened, she did not come out again quickly; at such times her face took on an obstinate, almost stupid expression. She was not exactly shy, but she was diffident and rather overawed by her sister, who had educated her, but who never even suspected that such a feeling existed in Katya. Arkady was at length reduced to calling Fifi over to him and stroking her on the head with a benevolent smile in order to create the impression of being at his ease. Katya went on arranging her flowers. Meanwhile Bazarov was losing and losing. Anna Sergeyevna played cards with masterly skill. Porfiri Platonich also knew how to hold his own. Bazarov lost a sum, which, though trifling in itself, was none too pleasant for him. At supper Anna Sergeyevna again turned the conversation to botany. "Let us go for a walk tomorrow morning," she said to him. "I want you to teach me the Latin names of several wild plants and their species." "What's the good of the Latin names to you?" asked Bazarov. "Order is needed for everything," she answered. "What a wonderful woman Anna Sergeyevna is!" cried Arkady.